All those 95 pages. Fun and missed. Oh, I saw was that change. Yeah, when I clicked on it, look, it was absolutely tall. When I changed, there was nothing. I mean, nothing on the minutes and nothing in the. Go back over.
It's freezing in here.
I like it.
I was hoping Jack would just summarize it pretty good.
I'm seeing the time is now 3:30, so we're going to call the meeting to order. Looks like everybody's here except for Ms. Skelly. And Jay Henson is filling in for Frank Gammon today. Thanks for coming, Jay.
Welcome, thank you.
Good to see you back.
Yeah.
Missed you. Got that out of the way. Next thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the September 1st, 2022 meeting. Is there any discussion on those, or would someone like to make a motion to approve? No discussion? Okay, so we have a second to approve the meeting minutes from September 1st. All in favor? Okay. Everybody was in favor except for one abstained, so, okay. Is there anyone signed up for public comments today? Okay, so no public comments. All right, moving on to the action agenda, item 4A, and I believe Mr. Semino is not here today, and hope he's feeling better. Okay, great.
Yes, you guys get me today.
We will turn things over to staff. Thanks.
Yes, so this is the PowerPoint that Jack presented at the September 6th Town Board work session, and that was what was included in you all's packet. And I believe this was just a discussion from my knowledge and my discussions with Jack about what the community and town board members and staff have seen come up as issues, concerns. So I believe that was just the purpose of the meeting, was to talk about these and talk about how to maybe possibly move forward in trying to address some of these items. These are a list of the different land use policies or 2040 community plan policies that the board has identified and staff has identified as wanting to initiate through ordinance amendments. So there are several concerns. One is a major residential subdivision that is now an administrative decision without the ability to increase 20-foot setback from adjoining incompatible development. 2 large-scale, 1-building, 1-lot apartments adjacent to smaller-scale residential as by right administrative staff approval. And these both stem from the apartments on Sanford, which I believe most of you are probably aware of, that are going to be like a 250-unit apartment building on 1 lot next to a single-family subdivision. Large-scale, 1-building, 1-lot apartment by right, but smaller-scale major subdivision limited to 30% attached. And this again relates to the same issue, as that the ordinance is unintentionally almost incentivizing these large-scale one-building, one-lot apartments over townhomes, because when you have to do a major subdivision, you are limited to that 30% attached. And then there is the state statute that prohibits building modifications for harmony with adjoining property if 2 or more affordable units are provided. I'm sure you all remember this very well. This is the text amendment that I am also managing. Rental single-family subdivisions. This came about, I believe, from the Hamlet, that the rental of single-family subdivisions and then the one single-family building on one lot, that those were related. And then the number of senior housing units. I am honestly not sure about this one, if we wanted more senior housing units, if we need more. So that's something we can look into. Brian, did you know with senior housing units, if we would want an increase in them?
We don't have an opinion on either way. It's just,
Okay.
it's just to identify what our existing housing stock is and what percentage that is. That's all.
Okay,
That would be up to the board to make a decision if they want to increase or decrease that percentage.
gotcha.
We don't have any goals for that.
Right. And so with the concerns, there are some very preliminary options that were presented, and this is just staff trying to look at what elements that we would like of the options and how to word it, but it's certainly nothing concrete. So a lot of it has to do with limiting the number of units, increasing setbacks, and considering some type of language to incentivize townhomes versus one large apartment building. And then this is a list of 1 apartment buildings on 1 lot that are multifamily. Majority of them you can see are senior living. And then the Sanford apartments have not been approved yet. And then I'm not sure what metric Jack used to measure this. If you add up all these units, it does come to 788. 2.5%, I'm not sure if that is
Total housing stock.
just total housing
That's
stock,
our
not
total
per
housing.
year.
No, that's
Okay.
our existing total housing stock.
Okay, so yeah, for the existing total housing stock, 2.5%. And then there is a map of our zoning districts and an older map from 2019 that shows available land underutilized, pending developments utilized. So obviously this has changed a lot since 2019 because we've experienced a lot of development in that time. And we have our GIS coordinator working on an updated map. But this kind of shows how much, utilized is 48%. And of course, this was back in 2019, so the numbers are going to be different now. But the amount of available and underutilized is a little over 40% in 2019. Okay, and that's all I had for you all on item 4A. I don't know, Brian, if you would like to add anything.
Matt, I've got a couple of questions, just for my benefit, I guess. Y'all probably already know all this, but I'm new. For instance, on this map, underutilized, what's the definition of underutilized?
That's a great question. Typically, it's larger tracts of land that have maybe 1 or 2 small ranchettes on them.
But it's,
farms that are undeveloped.
so it's underutilized in whose eyes?
Just when we looked at a land use analysis, if you found there were different parameters, I'd have to pull the parameters for this exact map. This was done by one of our consultants. But if it met certain criteria, say there was 1 house on 10 acres, that would be included as underutilized in this.
And the Sanford apartment parcel is actually included on this map as underutilized.
Well, now it's under construction.
Okay.
Well, yes, but point being, that was like a
It was
10 acre and
right.
only 1 house that had street frontage, so that's just a good plot of land to be redeveloped.
Okay, well, I guess, I don't want to beat this to death, but I guess, is this a standard planning type?
Whatever parameters they set forth is what they adhere to. They can change. We could say any parcel, I know earlier in my career, we did parcels 5 acres or more that had one single family home, or what we consider as ripe for redevelopment. I'm sure that's at least one of the minimum standards in here.
I mean, if I had a horse farm out there and y'all called it underutilized, I'd be a little concerned about what the government was gonna do to me next.
Typically, what
Okay, well, I don't like that term,
Definitely
but-
see your viewpoint, and it's really, you look at those that have low density, low yields, farms, barns, those are all potentially for redevelopment. That's what
Understand.
developers typically look for. It's all beauty's in the eye of the beholder. We'd love to have a lot of farmland. Unfortunately, a lot of farmers love to sell it to developers, so.
I just don't like the term underutilized. But, okay, the real question was, the concerns that you put up here earlier on the first few slides, those were concerns that the board had after they saw this, so you're just reiterating what their concerns were?
Those are the
Okay.
results of the
Okay.
work section on that.
Okay.
I forget which date they.
September 6th.
There you go. Thank you. Been a lot of them lately. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't understand one word you said. It was ranch.
You could have like a ranchette, you could have a barn, you could have.
Okay.
One building on 10 acres, one building on 5 acres. There are a lot of barns that are dilapidated that are just sitting out there, or former farms or former, horse farms. So you look at the lands that the developers typically look at.
Sorry, any additional questions for staff?
Is it on? Okay. So, like underutilized, like we had to ask you the definition of underutilized. So where would we be able to find definitions like that for words when we have a question
You'd
about
have to
what?
take a look at, I would want to go back and find out from this report what they measured. Like I know when I was doing them often for the planning department, it was vacant or one building on one lot of 5 acres or more in certain zoning districts. And it looked like they had hit all the zoning districts out there right now. So typically we'd look at something that wasn't occupied by a church, wasn't impeded by common open space, wasn't, part of a larger development like in a subdivision. So that's typically what those analysis run.
But the definition of words like that are not in the
No,
definitions
ma'am.
in the
It would
ordinance
be
book.
project specific.
Okay, project specific. Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, I guess we can move on to item 4B.
All right, so I just have the checklist up here for you all, but Matt, since this was kind of your item, I think we're just going to let you lead.
Well, I just wanted to review this with staff. I know we've addressed a number of these from the March 2022 bulletin, but I wanted to get an idea of what we haven't addressed and then kind of what the timeline to address the ones that apply to this board in terms of making ordinance changes related to legislative changes based on this checklist.
So I believe with conversations with Emily and Jacob, and of course they can correct me if I'm wrong, that they have taken care of the majority of these that are applicable to the town. And there is one on the skirting of mobile homes that they have the language ready to go that we'll bring to you all next month that I think is one of their last remaining items to address.
Okay, can we, just for transparency, in between now and the next meeting, can we get this in kind of a table form and, this was addressed via this text amendment, and this is the timeline that we're gonna address any of these outstanding items? Because this is kind of a pipeline of things that this board is gonna have to address, and we just
So
want to
I'll
make
just
sure
go ahead
that
and
we've
jump on
got
that.
it
We have
covered.
actually addressed all of the ones aside from the skirting amendment, which is more so a caveat that we're going to add to the zoning ordinance. Otherwise, all of them have been addressed. from both checklists. We may add one other caveat about co-location of small cell wireless facilities, but a lot of these on the checklist are not applicable to us because we do not handle the building code. We have an interlocal with Mecklenburg County, and they handle it for us.
And we've done the subdivision plat appeals changes. But staff's going to give us a table just to make sure we have this for the record.
Yes, we can.
That's been handled. Okay, great. If there's any questions related to checklist, things we need to address or potentially need to address, no? Okay. Moving on to item 4C.
All right, I don't have a slide for you for that. I got a slide for you for 4D, though.
Okay. So I wanted to have a discussion about things we could do to the subdivision and the zoning ordinances to make them a little bit more user-friendly. Some of the things just right off the top of my head, table of contents for the zoning ordinance, there's not one right now, and a table of uses. That's something that I think could save applicants and staff enormous amounts of time. Wouldn't you agree, Brian?
Yeah, we do have an older one. It's not part, it's just a tool that we have and that the staff uses. We can get that updated and put that out there. We do have a table of contents, but it's just more just outlining the, is there something more specific you're looking for on that?
Well, I know the subdivision ordinance has a table of contents, but in the PDF version of the zoning ordinance, I haven't noticed a table of contents. So the prior versions
Let
that
us
I've
double
reviewed.
check on that, and just so everybody knows, we are currently going through a process of converting our online zoning and subdivision ordinance over to Muni Code, so we'll be more consistent with the Code of Ordinances. Lots of other towns are using that, and Tracy's been great heading that up for us, and we should go live in a couple weeks with that. We got to get in there and do a lot of QA, QC just to make sure things weren't moved around on accident during the conversion process.
Understand,
Sure.
understand. So I'd like to open things up for discussion on that. Amy?
An index would be nice. For example, mixed use is used in multiple places in the zoning ordinances. But if we're talking about making it user-friendly, we're talking about beyond staff, right? So if you go look up the definition of mixed use, and then you'll see mixed use node, mixed use something else, a building maybe, and then you might think, okay, well, I have an idea of it, but you really don't, because then it's connected to shop front, and that's somewhere else, and then you've got percentages here and there, and they may or may not be fixed, and then there's just a lot of things there that if there was an index where someone could say, okay, if I really want to understand mixed use, then I need to make sure that I've hit all of these places, like in the back of a book. And that's just one, but I did come up with some other things, but I'll wait. I'll let somebody else.
And like I said, hopefully as we get through this conversion over to Muni Code and get that thing up and running, one of the things that it's lacking on its initial outlay is going to be hyperlinks between the different sections, but staff's going to roll those out as time permits, because we have to physically go in there and alter the code for each one of those links, but that will be done over time. Unfortunately, they didn't offer that service to us when we got in there.
Jay, I know you can think of a few things.
Jay has our code memorized.
I spend too much time with it. I'm the wrong person. I've been able to find everything I need. It's just because I know I've been there, you know. So it's,
Yeah.
or I'll email Brian and just he emailed me right back. Look here, just where it says it is.
Right.
So I'm probably not the best person to say it needs reorganized or something like that. Or
Absolutely. Like I said, we are always looking at ways to improve, communication and staff and how things are written. That was the big step, switching over to Muni Code and getting that uniform and in line with other communities. Kannapolis just rolled out their new video, very impressive. We're going to take a look at that and see if there's things that we can take from that and make ours more user-friendly as well.
so you are in the process of the Unicode, or going to start it?
Yeah, no, Tracy, what are we, about 80, 90% through?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
That'd be a big change.
Tracy's going to be fantastic and spend a lot of time doing QA, QC over the next couple of weeks before we go live.
So it's that close? Okay.
I didn't know that. That's exciting.
Yeah, this one happened quick. We got permission to do it, and we got finance was able to, get us some funds. We were able to make the conversion, and we piggybacked it on some other things, so there was some cost savings for the town. It'll be a searchable document too. Right. Yep, we're getting there.
Mr. Whitaker?
Could, maybe Tracy, could you email us when that thing's available so we could start looking at it?
Absolutely.
And I mean, outside of not waiting until the next board meeting, just let us know when we can start looking at it and give us a link to it. Thank you.
One of the other things that I think may be beneficial is if we did some sort of survey with applicants and/or their consultants and get some feedback from them in addition to feedback from this board. Things that could save time for staff, applicants, make things less complex. Is that something that we can do?
Yeah, we can look at putting something like that together, see what cost or who we need to go out to.
Yeah, I mean, as simple as possible, just what can we do to make this a little bit more user-friendly, save everybody time and trouble? So any additional thoughts? I mean, it's something we can continue to talk about in between now and the next meeting. Lance, Commissioner Munger?
Name and address?
Just kind of picking up on something you had said there, Jay. Do we have any concerns that any potential reorganization of the code could confuse the actual people who use it most? Developers, subcontractors?
Sure, I would say yes. I think there'll be a learning curve. There'll be a learning curve. Yeah, I guess, I don't know if it's rolled in or stopped clean, or if there's a transition, or, I mean, it's the same language, I'm
It's the
assuming.
same- Nothing's changing in the language. We're just literally changing platforms that it's on from a website-based or PDF, a non-searchable PDF to a searchable PDF and live websites with links. So it's the minutia is not changing. The order of it's not changing. But like at any given time, recently we just changed a significant portion of the subdivision ordinance, going from quasi-judicial to administrative. You get in there, you do your best to get in there and solve as many of the larger questions as you can. Until you actually roll it out, you may find things. We found there was a correlation between quasi-judicial and the subdivisions and the TIA, and the order that the TIA has to get done. So we have to do a text amendment to clean up that part of the TIA ordinance, because there's no longer set dates for planning board and town board. So we'll have to go back into Article 14 and clean those things up. But for what we're doing, switching to Municode, it's the same ordinance. But anytime we do text amendments, occasionally, especially larger text amendments, have effects across multiple sections. Sometimes, you do your best, but on occasion, some things get missed.
I did think of one thing. What's the possibility of one application?
Such as?
Like the land development application, general application, the TIA determination. I just think because it all has description, parcel ID, owner signature. They all financial responsibility form.
Repetitive information. That is definitely something we could
Just a thought.
explore. Sure. That would be a big application.
Well, it's all repeated, so I think,
No, I agree. Your core information
Yeah.
is the same on the top, and signatures would be the same.
yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look at. Maybe just different boxes for TIAs or LD.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something definitely we can look at exploring.
So you don't want to know how we feel about, we seem to feel there are missing definitions from Article 12.
Oh, feel free.
Okay, well, I mean, if we're
Yeah,
not gonna
if
change
if you
the
think there are things that you would like to
details
see
of it,
defined, we
okay.
can definitely make those text amendments to define those things.
Okay, so that's how we
Yep.
go about that? Okay.
I don't know if you've gotten word, but after
got
Monday night,
some.
first thing we did, it wasn't even Tuesday morning, we already had a definition defining non-residential and some things. Already-
That's a big one.
Didn't even make it to Tuesday morning, we were already working. on it.
Right.
So,
That's a big one. And then like plat, and I know that's simple for you guys, but for user-friendly kinds of ideas, people want to know the difference between concept plans and preliminary plans and
Sure.
sketch plans, because
Absolutely.
apparently it matters. So those kinds of things were what I was thinking.
No problem.
Thanks.
Everybody's so talkative today.
The only thing I had was, like Amy said, the definitions, because like, there's a definition for commercial, there's a definition for residential, but not non-residential or non-commercial, and other words that are used and that matter and make a difference, that can make or break something, and those definitions need to be clear where everyone that is involved can understand exactly what it means.
More than happy to, go through those text amendments to define those things. A lot of times, if it is not in there, then we revert to, the standard English dictionary. We're not going on Google, we're not going on Wikipedia, we're talking, Merriam-Webster's. And
Like when something says the developer must make significant progress, or this happens, what's the definition of significant progress?
I want to clarify that question because it depends on what it is. If it's for vesting, there are percentages associated with it, so I would want to add, is there a specific instance that you're looking for, or?
North State.
Okay, what part of our ordinance says significant?
It's not an ordinance, I believe it was in the sales contract.
I would defer to our attorney.
Well, I was going to talk to Anthony about finding that later, where I could find that information.
Okay.
Any further questions, comments? Okay, so if we can think about a
If there is
survey.
a specific list of words or things you would like to find, feel free to email them to staff, or we can go through Matt.
I think the next topic on the agenda may get into some of this, where we're talking about ambiguous terms.
On a list, we can get those together.
So,
Make a text amendment, bring it back, we'll go through the process.
got it. So, the survey piece of this, I think it would be extremely beneficial to get feedback from applicants or applicants' consultants,
Sure.
as well as this board and anybody else that, can suggest not necessarily a substantive change to the ordinance, but something that will make it
And
easier
we do that
to work with.
Jay was part of this last time. I don't know, did this group come out of some of that last time? We went through, we had, was it 4, 5, 6 years ago? We gathered a lot of developers and engineers and architects got together and had, a powwow, what's working, what's not working, and we made changes procedurally. We did do some text amendments, and that's kind of how we got to where our operating model is today, and we're always open to suggestions to always be more efficient, business-friendly, resident-friendly.
Yeah, I believe that's when we decided to begin the engineering department. I mean, the land development.
Yeah, when we brought that in-house, that group had a direct effect on that, bringing, land development in-house as opposed to going through Louisa. So we're not afraid to change. Like I was speaking at Huntersville 101 Wednesday. These documents are living and breathing documents. They're not stagnant. And, you guys know that's why you guys are here. At any given time, we could have 4, 5, 6 text amendments, going around in various stages. They take time as we go through different stages of development, different concerns. On your survey, I would ask for a little grace on time. We are barely breathing over in our department right now. So we'll find some time, we get together, come up with some questions, and figure out who we're going to invite to this group or who we're going to mail that survey out to.
I'm happy to help if you can delegate to me if you
We'll
need
find
to.
some time.
So,
All right.
good deal. Thank you for that. All right, if nobody has any further comments or questions on, what was that, item 4C maybe? We can move on to item 4D.
Okay, I just have a slide here, I pulled out some of the language from the document that Matt included in the packet for us, the court opinion from the visible properties versus Village of Clemens.
If you could, I don't know if everybody had a chance to read the actual case, but can you scroll to Professor Lovelady's presentation and where he talks about this particular case in that it's.
Can we, Tracy? No, oh, wait.
It's the NCAZO summer conference.
NCAZO, yes.
Right there. Yeah, that's it. It's gonna be way down at
And
the
then
back.
scroll, yeah, way down.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go a number of pages in.
Okay. Go down a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, right there. Now, okay, so this case was primarily related to signs, but that's not the reason for bringing this up. If you could scroll down just a little bit more. Okay. Well, it may have been snipped out of here. I think it's on page 18, if you go back to page 18. Up one, right, okay. So there's a set of language that the court cited in there. Determining which zoning provisions apply requires so much cross-referencing, it's almost dizzying. Basically saying that this ordinance that they were having to evaluate was so complex, it made, it difficult for them to arrive at an opinion. So that's the first thing. Complexity in an ordinance is a bad thing, is what I interpret this to mean. And if we can scroll down to past that page, please. The other things they talk about is when there is a conflict, we're supposed to try to harmonize the provisions of the ordinance to avoid a conflict when one exists. And then if we have ambiguous provisions in our ordinance and we do not have those defined, that we need to interpret those in favor of the free use of real property. So, and then his takeaway is clean up your ordinance. So every one of these ordinances has ambiguous terms, as we were talking previously here, whatnot. There was a couple I've cited in the past that have been cited in other cases, one being the most advantageous development. That's pretty ambiguous. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this is I think we need to look at ambiguous terms in our ordinance and determine whether we want to delete or define or leave them ambiguous. And if we do leave them ambiguous,
It's a conscious decision.
we need to make sure that whatever that interpretation is done in the favor of the free use of real property as the courts have said.
So that, if there is anything that's in gray areas, that's what Jack and I do. That's our job to interpret the ordinance, to make sure it's being enforced equally and fairly across all projects. And then oftentimes it does lead to cleanups or defining sections or rewrites of sections. And regarding to conflicting things, that's when we went through 160D, Jack and Emily did a fantastic job cleaning up as many of those things as you could possibly do. When we got our 1,000-page document, inevitably you're going to find something or miss something over time, or you change one section, it alters something else. So you always do your best to do that. And it's the nature of the beast, I suppose, that when you get in there are conflicts. Typically, the most restrictive applies, and so you go through and clean that up. And then you have those conscious choices you have to make. Do we want A or do we want B? Sometimes the state tells you, you're not going to have A, you're going to have B. Thank you very much. So we have to, once again, living, breathing documents that we're constantly changing. Market conditions change, environmental regulations change, political wills change, and we change.
Understand. Any comments, any thoughts? If, assuming everybody, well, I'm not sure how many people read it, but I think it would be good if we can come up with kind of a hit list of potential ambiguous terms that we may want to consider deleting or defining out of the ordinance.
Again, if there are things that are, unfortunately, we kind of get mired down in the weeds, and that's normal for us every day. If there are things that fresh sets of eyes, if you guys see that you're not clear on or we need to define, we'd be more than happy to do that. Like I said, I know we did a great job when we went through 160D and cleaned up a large number of those things. And sometimes those gray areas, those are tools that we get to use to make sure the town's getting things that they need or what are high priorities to the town. It gives us some flexibility sometimes too, to work with applicants, to work with residents, to make sure we can get win-win. Sometimes you don't want to lock it down too tight because then you're stuck. So there's a balance on there.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, you need to be flexible and adaptive.
Right.
But as the other takeaway is, the system doesn't need to be murky, ambiguous.
Agreed, and then there are times where you need it to be a little gray sometimes. Yes, ma'am.
We also don't want it to be surprising and shocking. So as an English major, I'm jumping all over this idea of being able to do this, and I understand that staff wants to do this in your time and on your own, but it would be really great for members of us as an ordinance board, or at least members of the board, to be able to have more than just, well, figure it out on your Saturday afternoon and let me know what you think, but really have some kind of stake in it.
The evil term subcommittee.
Because
If you
I
want to
think-
get a committee together and move on together and get pizza and spend some time together,
I'm chomping at this
we need to
bit.
do that. We will find ways to make things happen.
Mr. Finley?
I agree in being flexible and fluid throughout the process, right? There's a lot of asks on definitions right now for the staff. I'm curious, are we staffed enough to handle all of these asks?
No. I'll tell you right now, they're not. We're a planning department. I'll tell you right now, I'm about 95% administering, 5% planning right now. I'd love to be 70-30, okay? 60-40, if ideally. But right now, I'm about 95-5.
And I think that's the reality of it for us, and we need to hear that, because we can have all these asks, and it is important for us to stay on top of things. And as the town grows, we're going to readdress things that we haven't looked at 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and things like that. So, I'm just, I worry about
I'm
the
down
staff's
two
time and
people.
what
If
we're
anybody knows
asking
any,
and things like that.
if I'm down two people, if anybody knows any long-range planners, we're hiring. And if anybody knows any planner ones, I've got roles sitting open. Just, I can't find good candidates right now.
I understand, the issue with being understaffed and everything, but when we have projects that are possibly going through, that are going to affect our town for forever, some things just can't be put on the back burner.
Don't disagree. It's all about prioritizing, and there are things that statutorily we have to address as far as timelines and for rezoning, subdivisions, those types of things. We have to get those things through process. We know we're doing text amendments. We're going. I mean, I can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, and my friends know, we're emailing and texting all night, all weekend long, just depending on what's going on. So.
Understand, Brian. And I'm happy to put the time in on any of these things.
Like I said, if we can come up with a couple priorities, top of the list, we will find the time to make these things happen.
So if, members of this board, if you want to review the ordinance and cite a number of terms or words that are potentially ambiguous, and the way the court defines that, can you scroll down to, trying to find, it's going to be deep into the actual case. It'll be a highlighted section. I think it's on page 45 of the actual case.
Oh.
The actual case? Yeah. And the page number's in the left column.
Yes.
Yeah. Scroll down to about page 45.
Do you mean in the agenda? Because there's only 22 pages in this.
I'm sorry. No, it's paragraph 45.
Okay.
Okay, so, sorry. So the way they're defining an ambiguous term is when there are two or more reasonable interpretations. So anything where there are two or more reasonable interpretations, the court is going to consider ambiguous. So,
We definitely don't try to have two or more. We try to have one, and of course, if folks, disagree with our interpretation of an ordinance, they always have the right to appeal our decision. They can apply for text amendments to, alter those things or clarify. Staff can do that, boards can do that. So I'm not aware of anything that we've got two or more reasonable interpretations of the law, but I'm not going to say that there's not in the ordinance.
understand. Well, I'll review and come up with a few things, and any other board member would like to do the same, please feel free, and we can, collaborate with staff to see if there's anything on your end that we may need to review. But I think it would be good in light of this particular case, just to do a review and make sure, okay, if it is ambiguous and we don't want to delete it or define it, and we want to leave some flexibility there, that we're interpreting in the way they're saying we need to
And
interpret it.
just so you know, we have an interpretation list and some sheets, we call them yellow sheets when we had a lot of physical ordinances. We write down our interpretation, so we're very consistent as there are staff changes or as things change. We know, hey, we did this back in why did we do this in, let's just say 1999? You know, we needed some clarification. We would write those things down, so we would be consistent moving forward, because you may not see something for 10, 20 years, you know. That ordinance does try to cover a lot of bases, but you don't have a definition or a rule for absolutely everything. So that's why we do have those interpretations.
I understand.
Sure.
Any additional questions, comments, thoughts on that? Okay. Well, with that, that's our last agenda item. Thank you, staff, for your time, and we'll work on doing a review and seeing what we can come up with in collaboration with staff.
Always good to discuss these things, and we do have some text amendments coming up next month.
Yes,
Okay.
we have one on signs
Yep, so
coming
we have
up
a
for you all.
staff initiated amendment to our sign ordinance.
Does that comply with the case that's mentioned in his
Absolutely.
presentation?
Well, we're gonna find out next month, aren't we? No, we did it.
Yes,
Kaylee and
it
her coworkers have done a great job getting that cleaned up. We've listened to our constituents and business owners over the last 10, 15 years. And a lot of this is just reactions to those. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
all right?
All right. Well, with that being the last thing on the agenda, I'll open the floor up for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the week.